All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're looking at a really fascinating and, pretty complex political theory from our source material. It's called Project Alien Redaction. And look, this is not your typical conspiracy theory. It's actually a whole new way of thinking about how information, and more importantly, the lack of information, can be used to shape the way we all see the world.
The entire theory really boils down to this one powerful question. I want you to think about this for a second. Forget about big, flashy spectacles or fake alien invasions projected in the sky. What if the real power, the real tool, wasn't something you see, but a carefully designed absence that you're just meant to notice? That's the huge shift in thinking we're going to unpack here. So, to really get our heads around this new idea, the source material starts us off by comparing it to a theory you might have heard of before, Project Bluebeam. This is a great way to show the core difference between a politics of positive signals, things they actually show you, and this new idea, a politics of negative signals, which is all about what they hold back.
And this table just lays the logic out so clearly. On one hand, you've got Project Bluebeam. It's all about a positive signal, right? A giant fake image in the sky. The whole point is to focus everyone on one single thing, making us all passive spectators just watching the show. But Project Alien Redaction, well, this theory says it's the total opposite. The signal is negative. It's an absence, a hole in the story. And the medium isn't some big spectacle. It's scattered bits and pieces, an archive, an empty website, maybe even a missing person. It doesn't focus us. It scatters us, turning us into active detectives or pattern hunters, trying to piece it all together.
So yeah, it all really boils down to this simple but honestly pretty profound difference. One is a booming voice commanding you, look at this. The other is more like a whisper in your ear, just nudging you to notice what is missing. It's a total shift from open command to quiet suggestion. Okay, so how does this idea actually become a full-blown system, an architecture? Because the theory says this isn't just about random gaps in the news. No, it suggests there's a real structure to it, with its own set of rules for creating these absences and making them seem incredibly important.
The theory starts by saying you can't just think of the sky as one thing anymore. It's been fractured into 4 different kinds of interfaces. First, you've got the managed sky, like NASA's Artemis II mission. We can see it, it's photographed, and the government gives us the whole story. Then there's the anomalous sky. That's all the UAP files and grainy videos, stuff that's been recorded for sure, but is officially left unresolved. Third is the classified sky. Think of military sensor grids over the Strait of Hormuz. The sky there is literally restricted military data. And finally, you have the portal sky, like a website address, aliens.gov, that just sits there, an empty digital doorway waiting for something to appear.
And when you put all those together, what happens? Well, the sky stops being this simple, beautiful thing we all look up at. Instead, it starts to feel more like an operating system on a computer. You've got different windows open all at once. One's showing a NASA mission, another is a classified database, and one's just an empty folder, waiting. It creates this incredibly complex and confusing information environment.
So how does all this get turned into a political engine? The theory lays out a pretty clear 6-step process. First up, the release gate. Someone promises to release information, like UAP files, but then you get the displayed absence. The files never show up, the website stays empty. And that's when step 3, signalization, kicks in. The gap itself becomes the signal. It's treated as evidence. That triggers the pattern hunt, where we all start trying to connect this absence to other ones. Pretty soon, we get template lock-in, where familiar stories, deep state cover-up, get slapped on to explain everything. And the final goal? Fog production. Not answers, but a permanent state of confusion that just fuels speculation forever.
Okay, and this is where the theory escalates dramatically. It argues that this same logic, taking information out of a file, redacting it, can be applied to something way, way more chilling, redacting an actual person from the world. To make this point, the source uses a hypothetical future event. It imagines a letter dated April 20, 2026 from the House Oversight Committee, from people like Chairman James Comer and Subcommittee Chairman Eric Burleson. And in this letter, they're asking about scientists and tech people who have died or just vanished. And here's the key. The letter is based on recent unconfirmed public reporting, a phrase that officially turns a rumor into a gap in the record that needs to be investigated.
And the theory gets really specific about the methods. There's institutional redaction, where someone's connection to, say, NASA or Los Alamos becomes the main feature of their disappearance. Geographic redaction uses the location itself, the mountains near JPL, for instance, to create a mysterious vibe.
You have object left behind redaction. A phone or a wallet is found creating a neat little box around the missing person. There's even something called local fail redaction, where a boring local explanation, like a random crime, is offered up as a kind of camouflage for something much bigger.
And then the source material just crystallizes this entire horrifying idea with this one single incredibly potent line. Epstein redacted names. Project Alien Redaction redacts biographies. The whole argument is right there. It's the same basic technique, just blown up to a terrifying new scale, erasing not just a name from a list, but an entire life from the public story.
We've now arrived at what is without a doubt the theory's biggest and most politically explosive claim. The source calls it the maximal hypothesis. It moves way beyond just scattered events and points the finger at a central organizer. And just to be clear, we are neutrally explaining the claims laid out in the theory itself.
So here it is. The maximal hypothesis posits that a political figure like Donald Trump isn't just taking advantage of these weird mysteries for his own gain. No, the theory actually claims that he, or his network, is the central organizer, the one actively creating and managing this whole landscape of missing signals, from empty websites all the way to missing people.
Now you might be thinking, hold on, all these cases sound completely different, and that's the obvious objection, right? But the theory has an answer for that. This quote explains its logic perfectly. The argument is that the differences aren't a flaw, they are a feature. If there was a single, clean pattern, the operation would be easy to spot. So making the cases different, a hiking accident over here, an undisclosed cause of death over there, that is the camouflage.
An operation like this couldn't work in a vacuum, right? The theory claims it depends on a whole media ecosystem. The mainstream media plays its part by giving it a sense of legitimacy with cautious language like unconfirmed reporting. Then, alternative media comes in and pumps it full of mythic energy, turning it into a story of dead scientists and cover-ups. And finally, when officials deny it and say there's no verifiable evidence, that doesn't end the story. It just creates the next gap, making people ask, well, who does have access to the evidence?
So this is probably the most crucial takeaway. The goal here is not what you think. It's not about a perfect, clean cover-up. I mean, if it were perfect, it would just disappear, and no one would talk about it. No. The goal is managed incompletion. It's about creating a permanent state of fog, leaving just enough clues, just enough questions to keep people hunting for patterns forever without ever giving them an answer.
And that brings us right back to the theory's core defense. You see, the old way of thinking looks at all the differences and says, see, they can't possibly be connected. But this maximal hypothesis completely flips that on its head. It says the cases are different by design so that you won't detect the connection. It's a really fascinating and frankly, pretty unsettling piece of political logic.
And that's what I want to leave you with. In our world today, we are just drowning in information, right? We've got endless data, images, videos coming at us 24/7. So in an age like this, has the very nature of power shifted? Is it possible that the most effective, most powerful signal isn't something someone shows you anymore, but is actually the one that's been deliberately, carefully, and very suggestively removed?